Today we're going to be taking a look at a few molds from the Prodigy H series. Now the H series is the lineup of discs from Prodigy that before this 30-day series I knew absolutely nothing about. But come to find out, after throwing all these discs over the last few weeks, the H series, specifically the H3 V2, might be my favorite or one of my favorite Prodigy discs. Today we have with us the H7, which is a 10.5 -4.1, the most understable disc in the H series lineup. If you look closely, it very much resembles like a Roadrunner type disc. I have not actually thrown these yet, so the throws today are going to be the first ones that I've seen and you guys are going to see from these H7s. I'm pretty sure there's an H5 that is going to bridge the gap between the H4 V2 and the H7, but I don't have an H5, so unfortunately you're not going to be seeing anything about that. The H4 V2, I've come to really like this disc as well, specifically for rollers. I've been laying down some really nice rollers with this disc. It's very easy to get to flip over. It's a 10.5 -2 1.5. Honestly, I think it flies a little bit more understable than that, but for a lower arm speed, it's gonna fly almost identical to the H3 V2. The H3 V2 coming in at 11.5 -1.2, I think is a very, very true 11.5 -1.2. This is that, you know, dare I say, beat up Wraith slot. It's an 11 speed, it flips up, it flies, it's really controllable, it feels great. The cool thing about the H series, and I've talked about it a little bit, is kind of this weird, like, I call it like a neutral molding where the top and the bottom are almost the same. And I think it's very unique. There's no other companies out there that are really molding discs like the majority of these H series. And whether you love it, maybe you hate it, I personally like the feeling of these. I think it's very, very unique. And then we have the H1 V2, which comes in at 11.403, and I actually haven't thrown these either. Now, I'll be honest, guys, I do not think these feel good. This is like if you took the H3 or the H4 V2 and just made it super, super sharp. It's the same kind of molding, like, style, but they're really hard, both of them, the 500 and the 750. It just doesn't feel like a disc that I would be throwing. I don't know. I haven't thrown them yet. We're gonna chuck them today. I'm anticipating a lot of stability, but let's get right into it.
There's 3 keys to disc golf: driving, approaching, and putting. You need all 3 to do this disc sport.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna go ahead and throw these from least stable to most overstable, see how they fly, give you guys a little bit of demonstration, and I'll share my thoughts. Straight tailwind as well, which is nice. I feel like a crosswind or a headwind, you don't get a great read. A tailwind, obviously it's gonna stable them up maybe a little bit, but overall pretty consistent, nothing crazy, maybe 5-7 miles an hour. H7 400 plastic. Flipped a lot, but it really is like a easy to throw disc. Very low arm speed. I would say out of the box it seems more understable than a Roadrunner is going to be. 500 plastic H7. Wow, so I can't tell how different my throws were there. I definitely tried to, you know, not burn that one over, get it to push and fly a little bit better. Seemed a little bit more overstable than the first one I threw. The H4 V2. Now these, I'm gonna put a little bit more into, really try and get them to full flight. See what I mean with how much the H4 V2 flips? Like, I think it's a little more understable than the flight numbers would call for, but it is a beautiful flight. Obviously, there's 4 nets out there that you can see in the distance, at least, you know, kind of lined up straight with me, which is nice because if I aim right at the middle, you can kind of gauge, you know, where it lands. If it lands, you know, in the furthest one to the right, obviously turned over quite a bit, and the other way as well. But H4 V2, super fun one. We're gonna throw them a few times through today. I'm gonna lay down a couple rollers with them as well, because honestly, I think that might be where the H4 V2 shines. Being that the H4 V2, or just the H series overall, has that super neutral mold to it, I just think once it hits the ground, it has the potential to be a great roller because of how neutral it is, you know, it's like a wheel. 400 plastic orange one here. I've only thrown this like one time in the field. We'll see if it's more stable or less than that blue one I've been throwing. Seems like that one might be more. Really nice flight though. Good to know. I kind of hope that orange one is a little bit more overstable, because the H4 V2 I really like, but I think that blue one is almost only a roller, whereas that orange one might bridge the gap between the H3 V2s and the blue H4 V2. So nice. I think that's kind of just a textbook shot there. I tend to throw pretty low. So if you're unfamiliar with my game, just know I'm not the type of player who likes to put a lot of air under his shots. So I'm gonna try and really keep them pushing low on like a line drive type of line. But man, does that H3 V2 fly nice. It's just, it's very easy to throw. I think for a player like me who's sitting, you know, 60 mile an hour thrower, give or take on average, but then pretty high RPM, somewhere, you know, between that like 1350 to 1450, somewhere in there. Just a nice smooth tosser, I would like to classify myself as most of the time. I think the H3 V2 really fits my style. Might be a little more stable. Interesting, okay. So it seems like maybe the 500 in both the H3 V2 and the H4 V2 are gonna flip more, and then the 400 is gonna be a little bit more overstable. Good to know. I've been jamming on the blue ones mainly just because I like how they look a little better, and the plastics feel almost the same. Up next we got the H1 V2. I'm expecting a lot of stability, especially with this little bit of tailwind we have here. I'm probably gonna hit these on a little bit of a flex shot because I gotta get them to fly at least. You know what? I should have respected the flight numbers maybe a little bit more as just being a 0.3, because I put a flex on that, obviously stabled out, but I was expecting just a meat hook based on how this disc feels. I'm gonna throw this one with a power grip. I really wanna just jam on it and see what happens. Everything else today has been fan grip. Okay. So I'm not gonna lie, pleasantly surprised with that disc. I will still say I don't love the feel of it. It's very sharp. Went and picked all these up and actually measured the distance, kind of average with the U disc. Maybe not the most accurate, but it tells you something. Pretty much right where that white small net is in the middle of the field that I'm kind of throwing right towards, about 350 feet if I stood right in the middle of where I kind of picked all these up. So good little smooth distance for a hybrid driver, just to give you a little read on the distance, I guess. We're gonna throw some more shots. This time we're gonna go most overstable to least overstable with the H1 V2. I'm gonna just smack the shit out of this thing. I wish I would have thrown it a little higher. The tailwind also definitely dropped it a little bit. But man, I'm kind of a little sad maybe that I slept on the H1 V2 for this whole series so far, just because I felt it, didn't love it. But you guys know I always talk about how if I feel a disc and I don't like how it feels, I kind of just don't even give it a shot. That was that. Not that it's doing anything crazy. It's just Prodigy doesn't have a ton of overstable fairway control drivers. Like that's kind of something they don't really have a ton of. You know, they got the F1, but it's not really that overstable. They got the FX2, which, you know, can be really overstable or can be, you know, pushy overstable, but it's still only one option. And then you got the H1 V2 as kind of like your third option in reality. And it's not a hog like I thought it was gonna be. And I thought I wouldn't like it at all or have any use for it. This one seems like maybe it's more overstable, just the look of it, but 500 plastic. We're gonna try and give it some height. Okay. Once again, pleasantly surprised. I guess that being said, my thoughts on the H1 V2 change a little. It's like better than I thought. It kind of just felt like a brick. Still feels like a brick if I'm being real with you guys, but flies better than expected. H3 V2. Now, the H3 V2, one of my favorite parts about, well, just the H series is that they feel really good in the forehand. And I think one of Prodigy's maybe downfalls is the lack of forehand discs. Now, some people might be like, "Bro, there's no such thing as forehand discs." Yes, there are. Some discs fly better forehand than others. Some discs feel better forehand than others. It's going to be a little different to everybody, but it's a thing. Scott Stokely, I think, says it isn't. It is. Sorry. But H3 V2, I love on the forehand. So we're going to throw a couple side hand slingers here. See how these fly. Now I'm trying to remember. I think so. This blue one, the 500. So the 500 is less stable. We're gonna go with that one first. Look at that. Oh, baby. See how this one flies. Try and give it a little more height. Did I really just say I'm gonna try and give it a little more height and then scrape it off the ground? H4 V2, I'm gonna lay down a roller for you guys. Hopefully do it good. I haven't thrown one in like a week now. I'm still learning the angle, but. Oh, yeah. Wow. That was so good. Just all the way to the furthest right net. I mean, I think that shot basically speaks for itself. If you're looking for a roller disc, if you're similar arm speed to me, and you've always struggled with throwing rollers. So I throw about 420 feet, I would say, is like my good smack on a distance driver. It's relatively consistent. I can pump one like over 450, but I'm like launching it, hoping for the best, you know what I mean? And I've never been able to get rollers down, but also I've never been able to get rollers down and have them go further than I could already throw, which isn't really that far. The H4 V2, the few rollers that I threw, they were going way further than I could throw. It's like one of the first discs I've had that I actually trusted to get down, fit my arm speed good, hit the ground running, and actually just, I feel like, launches forward and keeps that speed. So highly recommend that disc. H4 V2, a little bit more stable one. I'm gonna try and give this a little more height, drag it a little more left to right. Like I'm gonna aim at the furthest left net and really hope that it kind of gets that late flip. A little bit more stable 400 H4 V2. Oh, I kind of torqued it. Dang it. I definitely didn't really throw that like on hyzer. Kind of just hit it flat up in the air. But I guess that might be a decent representation of how the H4 V2 is kind of right on that line of if you hit it right, it flies like really nice. But if you're not super consistent with it, you kind of can burn it over a little bit. It's right in that tweener spot. See, these are an interesting disc because the reality is these are probably for like quick cut rollers, maybe really finessey wooded shots, but more or less I'd say it's a lower arm speed player. Maybe someone who's only throwing about 300 feet, they're gonna pick up an H7 and then it might really fit their arm speed. If you're a player who only throws about 300, maybe 350, like totally max, mess around with more 9 and 10 speeds because most likely you're not utilizing a disc that fits your arm speed good enough to get you that extra distance. Whereas maybe you're throwing a destroyer, 325, you should try 9 and 10 speeds because that might, one, get the distance easier, might get you more distance easier, and overall just be a little bit more consistent. But I'm gonna try a little forehand flip up with the H7. Okay, I didn't really respect that one. I thought it would really flip. Okay, yeah, that one is way flippier. Honestly, I think the H7 side hand, maybe like in the woods for something like, you know, if you didn't quite have a stance, you had to lean out and do something fancy, it might work. But I think they're definitely much flippier than your typical road runner disc, which also I guess would mean it's maybe a little easier to throw, a little more fitting for kind of your beginner player. Other than that, I'm gonna throw a quick get down roller and kind of just see how it reacts, I guess. Just want to see how far it gets. It's scooting, but as you can tell, the difference of stability, where it's more understable, it's gonna, you know, just curl off to the right and flip faster than something like the H3 or H4 V2 is gonna. It's a good roller as well if you need something that ends to the right. If one thing comes from this Prodigy series, it's me learning to throw rollers, because the D4, the H4 V2, maybe now I'll start working one of these in. Who knows? We got the F9s as well that we haven't even tested out. Those will be coming soon. I'm gonna try one more roller. Oh. That one is like significantly more stable, and it's more domey, which made me definitely think it was gonna be less overstable or less stable. You can tell that flew almost the same, ended about the same spot, but pushed a little further straight. Either way, your boy's kind of feeling dialed with these rollers somehow. So before we head out, guys, what I want to do is take the H1 V2, H3 V2, H4 V2. I want to throw them on my stock, nice hyzer release, and just see how they react. So you can kind of get that like full just comparison. We're gonna go 500 plastic for all of them on this shot, just because we got 500, and all of them we're gonna go, we'll go most stable, least stable. Yeah, okay. Man, I really like the H3 V2. That blue one is really flippy. I'm not sure I'll obviously be able to see it, and you guys will see it, where maybe I kind of pulled that one over, but that blue one, that's like a guaranteed flip, which is interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and throw the last three here and just kind of see how they fly. Same angle. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. I found this field that's decently close to my house. Obviously I can come out here on like weekdays, midday, so no one's out here. It's been pretty nice. So finally found a spot where I can probably come and do all these series recap videos of, you know, the putters, the mid-ranges, the fairway drivers, you get the point. And we got a nice dry cement surface to throw from. But enough yapping. Hope you guys are enjoying this series so far. See ya.
I remember all them winters, drinking Woodford till we drowned.
H4 V2, if you hit them right, man.
Creator of Frisbee Club,
The man,
motherfuckers.
the man, the myth.
And right here, I have a frisbee bag. It holds all my frisbees, the ones I like.